And to this conversation now, legendary South African trumpeter and singer and also composer Hugh Masekela has joined Siparia Deltones to create a collaborative album titled Siparia to Soweto. The album brings together a combination of African and the Caribbean mixed together, cultures, sounds and history. To speak to us more about this, I'm joined by the band leader of the Siparia Deltones, Akinola Senon. Good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Newsnight. Quite an exciting collaboration, bringing together the sounds of Africa and the sounds of the Caribbean. Just talk to us about how this collaboration first came about.
Yes, good evening to the people of South Africa. As you say, it's quite an exciting time for us presently right now because this album has been more than a decade in the making. Our dearly beloved and late Hugh Masekela, he traveled to Trinidad and Tobago about 12 to 13 years ago, and he heard the Siparia Deltones performing at a concert called the Santana Jazz Fest. And after, while we were playing, his entire band, they came to the side of the stage, and in his words, they were like so astonished, they were so surprised of the wonderful songs they were hearing coming from the Siparia Deltones, that as our performance was over and we were backstage, he basically came and asked, how can we be a part of, how can he be a part of what we did? Our arranger, another legendary musician from Trinidad and Tobago, a student of Barry Harris, Mr. Carlton Zander Alexander, met with Mr. Masekela, and basically the rest was history. He traveled to Trinidad on about 2 different occasions and engaged in the music of the indigenous music of Trinidad and Tobago, and music that represents, all of our peoples that settled here, and of course infused the songs of South Africa and Africa at large into what we were doing, and we came up with this amazing amalgamation called From Siparia, which is where we are from, to Soweto in South Africa.
It's a beautiful collaboration. I think a lot of South Africans are excited to hear the sound. There's been a few collaborations put out already. But do you find similarities between Caribbean music and African music? I know there's a lot of drums involved, but where are the links between Africa and the Caribbean when it comes to sound and music?
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, from a Trinidad and Tobago perspective and many other parts of the Caribbean, the African influence is a very dominant influence. For the African man was brought to these parts, firstly via trade and stuff, but our second coming to these parts was via the transatlantic slave journey. And after the emancipation of the slaves, or the enslaved men rather, the African man started, to that journey to reclaim his identity. And this reclaiming of identity started seeing some of his cultural expressions coming into being. And these cultural expressions, re-emerge now in the Caribbean after, experiencing a certain level of integrative existences and that kind of thing. So many of the expressions that what we deem Caribbean, our philosophy states that many of these expressions found its root in Africa and re-emerge in the Caribbean, taking a whole new different shape because of the different socioeconomics and politics and geography and all these other factors. Even our dearly beloved steel pan. Steel pan is an evolution of the drum. Mm-hmm. And the drum, was what has always been the orator of the African story. The common denominator of that instrument, that could best represent, that which is African culture, coming from Africa into the New World would have been the drum. So, the steel drum in itself, has a very strong and dominant tie to Africa.
Akinola, I want to talk about the latest single. It's titled Mango Tree. Let's just talk about what that song means, what the title of that song means, as I've read that there is quite a lot of significance and meaning to it. But also elaborate on what the song sounds like and what we can expect when this single is released a little bit later. I think it's coming out on the 15th of September.
Well, I think generally, if we want to explore the tree at large, in African societies, in the villages, I think gathering below trees, was an integral part of African village life. School would have happened below the tree. Village councils would have happened below trees at many times, and the elders would have been a place for the gathering of the elders. And I think, the African man now in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago, our DNA would have remembered those below the tree gatherings. And it took shape a lot in Trinidad and Tobago with the mango tree. So that mango tree would have been a place of meeting, a place of integration. Because when mangoes are in season in Trinidad and Tobago, it automatically becomes one of the main staples, for our people. So below the mango tree is a place where I say people would have find romance. A lot of people met their first girlfriend, even their wives below the mango tree. It's a place where political affairs is discussed. It's a place where people find recreation. And it's a place, as mentioned earlier, during its seasonal time, dinner, lunch, and breakfast is sought after below that mango tree. In Trinidad and Tobago, in the American culture, you would buy a very good rose, carry on a date. In Trinidad, you tend to get a very good mango. The best mango.
I want to expand on the album, because it's not just one or two songs. There's an actual album that was produced as well. Let's talk through the sound of the album, what inspired the album, and what those sounds are that we can expect that will remind us of the legendary Hugh Masekela.
Well, definitely the album is heavily jazz influenced from a standpoint of improvisation. But though heavily jazz influenced, the songs of the Caribbean and Africa is very dominant in it from a rhythmic perspective, from an orchestration perspective, from a compositional perspective. Throughout the album as well, the steel drum is a very dominant song that you hear. The songs also would give a unique and diverse representation of the different persons and different cultures that exist in Trinidad and Tobago. So there's Spanish and Latin influence in it, there's East Indian influence in it, of course there's the African influence in it, and all these persons being represented on the album and merging with that traditional Soweto song, that traditional, jazz song, that traditional song from Hugh Masekela's trumpet, is very deep and inspirational voice.
Well, it's going to be interesting. We can't wait to hear it. Like I mentioned earlier, this single, The Mango Tree, will be released on the 15th of September, if I'm not mistaken. When can we anticipate the album?
The single Mango Tree was already released. Another song, Bingole, was released last Friday, but the entire album, Siparia Deltones, would be released on the 15th of September. So actually, it's the entire album being released on the 15th of September.
Okay.
I kind of want to encourage, the listeners to follow at Siparia Deltones on Facebook and on Instagram, to keep updated, with all that will be happening with the album. Hugh Masekela's page as well, Monk Music as well. You know, one could receive many updates, you know, on all the rollouts that will be happening, you know, regards the album.
Amazing. Akinola, thank you very much for your time. We can't wait to hear more, and we anticipate the album as well. Thank you very much for sharing your stories and your memories with the legendary Hugh Masekela, and chatting a little bit about your relationship and how the two of you met, and the memories that were made. We appreciate your time, and we can't wait to hear the music. That was Akinola Senin from the group Siparia Deltones, a collaborative album between the Deltones Steel Orchestra and the late and legendary Hugh Masekela is set to launch on the 15th of September. So if that is something that you are interested in hearing, go to the various social media platforms to download and enjoy the music.